Much like the Sisters of Battle, the Leagues of Votann didn't start off 10th edition in the best of places. They definitely paid for the sins of their rather disgusting 9th edition release, where they had to be heavily nerfed before the codex had even hit the shelves, and now in 10th edition they have been massively reined in, and they were pretty much relegated to the bottom of the tier list for quite some time. They've since had some welcome changes, things like the Ruthless Efficiency Detachment rule now granting you a lot more front-loaded judgment tokens. Being able to mark up to 4 enemy units in Strike Force size games gives you a much better boost to your damage output compared to how they were before, as well as getting some sweeping points changes. I believe that every unit in the entire army got a decrease in the latest Munitorium Field Manual, just to help you get a bit more out of your units. So they are in a much better spot now, but today, as always, is a day of going through 5 of their datasheets that I think are arguably their best, and the ones that you should probably be looking at and considering for a competitive army. Now, the Votann don't have a huge amount of datasheets in general at the moment. They do, I believe, have just 12, but still, this is 5 that I think do sit at the tip top of that pile. Straight in the number 5 spot, we have the non-named HQ for the leagues, the Carl. This guy is just solid. He is all round, short and sweet, and very, very useful. He comes in at a cheeky 70 points, which nets you a toughness 5, 3-up save body with a 4-up invuln. He only has 4 wounds, which is a bit low, I will admit, and then he also has the standard 5-inch move for Votann. So as I said, he is short and he is sweet. He has some reasonably solid weapons. He has an Autork Combi Bolter and a Plasma Axe as standard. The Bolter gives him 4 Strength 4, 0 AP, 1 damage shots at 24 inches, and the Axe lets him swing 4 times, hitting on 2s at Strength 5, minus 2 AP and 2 damage. He can choose to swap those out for a Vulcanite Disintegrator, which is 3 shots at 18 inches at Strength 5, no AP, 1 damage, but also has devastating wounds. I think that is definitely better than the Combi Bolter. And then he also can swap the Axe out for a Mass Gauntlet. That drops an attack down to 3, and it only hits on 3s, but being Strength 8, minus 2 AP and a flat 3 damage, again, I think that is just better overall. So if it was me, I would be swapping out both of his base weapons for these new ones. He also has a brilliant choice in war gear. He can take the Rampart Crest, which just gives the unit he's joined a 5-up invuln. It's really simple, it's really powerful, it's a really great way to boost their durability. Or if you want to try and get around the League of Votann slower movement, he can instead take a Teleport Crest. And what this does is it grants him and the unit he has joined Deep Strike. So depending on whether you want the squad moving up and just being really difficult to kill, or you want them to be able to get into the enemy backfield and steal some of your opponent's backfield objectives, he can do either of those really quite well. On the abilities front, he also definitely brings great value for his cost. He grants lethal hits to his unit with Kindred Hero, which is a fantastic unit buff, really letting you leverage the most out of your attacks and working as an exceptional force multiplier for those 70 points. And then Grim Efficiency is another incredible tool, letting him put a judgment token on an enemy unit in your command phase. So now you can, in turn 1, get an enemy unit with 2 tokens on it really, really easily, and essentially grant yourself army-wide +1 to hit and +1 to wound against that unit. So he is just a fantastic addition to an army, purely for buffing not only his squad in a few ways, but also getting your entire army a potential +1 to wound buff against a key enemy unit. And that +1 to wound really can be a game-changing play right from the start of the game. So for just 70 points, I think he is an auto-take every single time, even if you discount his own reasonably decent attacks that he has himself. He is just such a strong force multiplier. He brings really good value to basically any Leagues of Votann army. The Harkin Pioneers are next. These guys got a very welcome drop to 90 points for 3, so they are just 30 points each now. And for that, they not only bring durability with 3 wounds at toughness 6 and a 4-up save, but also, crucially, that hugely important 12-inch move, which for an army like the Votann is just so important and beneficial for them to have a few units that can get around the board and zip around much faster than your opponent may be expecting. It really is so easy for just 90 points to slot a unit of these into your army to just go off and capture faraway objectives, potentially tie up enemy chaff, or just go around and get good firing angles on your opponent and become an absolute nuisance for them until they're dealt with. They are pretty awful in melee. They just have 2 strength 4 attacks each that hit on 4s, so you don't want them in melee. But with that 12-inch move, you can, at least in theory, avoid a lot of combat that you don't want to be in. And where you really want these guys is, as I said, speeding around the board, making the most out of their movement, and shooting into your opponent, and they can do that relatively well. They each come with a Magna Coil autocannon, which is 3 shots at strength 7, -1 AP and 2 damage. It only hits on 4s, so yes, you may be thinking, that's not fantastic. And sure, it's not, although worth noting that this will go to 3s of course against a judged target, which does help. They also have a bolt shotgun each, which grants them an extra 2 shots at 12 inches, which is strength 5, 0 AP and 1 damage. So again, it's nothing amazing, but that is still potentially within 12 inches, getting you 5 shots per bike. On top of that, 1 in 3 can take a special weapon, either the High Las Rotary Cannon for anti-infantry. This brings 6 shots with sustained hits 1 at strength 6, -1 AP and 1 damage, which is great against guardsmen and gaunts and that kind of stuff. Or they can take the Ion Beamer, which is a little bit more anti-elite. It's only 3 shots, but it has sustained hits D3, so that is potentially 9 hits in total, and it is strength 7, -2 AP and 1 damage. On top of that, a bike that takes a special weapon also gets +1 wound, so you will have a 10 wound toughness 6 squad going around, being really quite efficient at taking out enemy infantry of all sorts, from big hordes to more elite squads. In terms of war gear they can take, they also have a few good options. The bike with the special weapon can't take any of these, so it is going to be a maximum of 2 of them if you are also bringing one of those better guns. But the squad can take a comms array, which gives them a chance to regen a CP on a 5+ when you target them with a stratagem. They can take a pan-spectral scanner, which grants the unit ignores cover, which is actually really amazing, with their guns having mostly -1 or -2 AP, or they can take the roll bar searchlight, which grants them +1 to hit against enemies that have stealth. So this doesn't get you to hit on 3s natively, but it does mean you can avoid being dropped to a 5s to hit, which is a really big bonus for them. Where this squad really does come into its own, however, is with their abilities. Not only do they have outflanking Mag Riders, which lets you remove the unit and put it into strategic reserves at the end of an enemy turn if they are within 6 inches of a battlefield edge, meaning you can pretty much get these guys across the entire board in a single turn if you need to go grab a faraway objective. But then on top of that, they also have the Scouts 9 inches rule, so with their 12-inch move and potentially an advance, they can get up to 27 inches from your deployment turn 1, and for a slow 5-inch moving army like the Votann that everyone kind of expects they're just going to be slow and durable, that is amazing, and it really will allow you to go and steal enemy objectives, especially because they have an OC value of 2, so they are going to be OC 6 even on a min 3-man squad, so they can definitely steal objectives away from smaller 5-man backfield holding units that your opponent might have. And then they can also just get in the way of charging units, or put a unit into your enemy's deployment to score secondaries that they're going to have to deal with. They are just really, really useful. Their output isn't amazing all by itself, it's fair to say, but I just think that for 90 points, that speed, that mobility, and that ability to take objectives faster than your opponent might be expecting really, really will make them a strong and very useful addition to a Leagues of Votann army. In the number 3 spot, we have the smaller of the 2 Votann vehicles. The Sagitar, this is the Rhino or Razorback equivalent, really. It's a more lightly armed, speedier transport, but for the Leagues of Votann, this actually does come with some reasonably decent output, as well as some really useful abilities that the leagues can take advantage of. At 100 points, it is a bit pricier than a Rhino or a Razorback, but you do definitely get a good amount for that price tag. It has a 12-inch move, it's toughness 10, it's got 9 wounds, and it's got a 3-up save, so it is a sturdy little thing. And then on the weapons front, unlike the measly Stormbolter that a Rhino has, the Sagitar has a twin bolt cannon, pumping out 3 strength 6, -1 AP, 2 damage shots with sustained hits 1, and with twin linked, which nets you already a fairly tasty anti-infantry gun. But then on top of that, it also comes with a las cannon style high las beam cannon for 2 strength 12, -3 AP, d6 damage shots with sustained hits d3. So that is potentially 6 strength 12 hits onto an enemy unit, so you can do a huge amount of anti-tank damage with this thing. If you want to swap that out though, you can take the L7 missile launcher and Sagitar missile launcher, which is like a combo set. It brings you a strength 9, -2 AP, d6 damage, crack missile-esque, or a frag style strength 4, 0 AP, 1 damage attack with d6 shots. And then on top of that, it also has the Sagitar launcher, which is an extra 2 shots at -3 AP and 3 damage. So there is some really solid anti-armor and anti-infantry shooting available from that option. The final choice you have is the Matter autocannon. This is your dedicated anti-infantry option if you really want to go all in against enemy infantry. It is 6 strength 7, -1 AP, 2 damage shots. So you can kit this thing up really to be massively anti-armor with things like the high las, or incredibly good anti-infantry, or a reasonable mix of the both. And I think this is generally considered to be a Votann Razorback rather than a Votann Rhino. It is very much an APC with some boosted firepower, and I think it can definitely punch above its weight really quite well for those 100 points. But that's not all, because on top of the extra durability and damage output of this thing, it can also move, which, as I said earlier, is great for an army like the Votann. It has a 6-inch scout as an ability and blistering advance, which means it can advance and your guys can still get out afterwards. They can't move again or charge, but again, it does mean that turn 1, your slow 5-inch moving infantry could potentially be a whole 27 inches across the battlefield and still able to unleash a load of firepower into an enemy squad, or again, just steal an objective from them. For 100 points, this is, I think, a very, very, very strong utility tool to have for the leagues. The final thing to mention for the Sagitar is that it can only transport 6 models. So your 10-man Hearthkin warrior squad may well be standing there thinking, well, what do we do now? We can't all get in this thing. Well, the Sagitar allows a squad to essentially combat squad into it. You can split something like a Hearthkin warrior squad into 2 units of 5 and embark one onto the Sagitar whilst the other can, be deployed on a home objective or just out of line of sight, or hell, if you decide to bring another Sagitar, you can specifically in the rules here put 1 squad of 5 into each. So if you've bought 2 Sagitars, you can fill them with 1 warrior squad and have 2 units going up the board moving 27 inches and just grabbing 2 objectives from your opponent turn 1. It is a really solid choice, and I think it is useful to have in almost any Leagues of Votann list. Possibly a unit that is a lot of players' absolute top Votann unit at the moment is what I have in the number 2 spot, and that is the Terminator style Einherjar Hearthguard. Like their Marine cousins, step cousins, like 10 times removed? Don't know, but like the Marine equivalents, these are essentially your Terminators. They have a 2-up save like Terminators, but then their profile also has an improved toughness 6 to go along with it, and a native 4-up invulnerable save. They do only have 2 wounds, which is a shame, but all told that is still a toughness 6 2-up save 2 wound model, and for a squad of 5, you're looking at 150 points, so 30 points per. It is not shabby at all. Now, I said the invuln is native, and it is to an extent. It comes from their squad sergeant, the Hesir, who has a weave field crest, which grants them that invuln, but that can be swapped out if you want. So whilst they do come with the invuln base, you can get rid of it if you want, and the sergeant can take a teleport crest instead, and what this does is it grants them deep strike. So again, you can get round that slow 5-inch move and really get them wherever you need on the board with that deep strike. You just have to give up your invuln, which, you know, kind of a lot of people may not be willing to do. But what is really interesting, and I can't personally see anything that prevents this, someone pointed out if it isn't allowed, but they can be joined by a Carl, and as mentioned earlier, he is very good in his own right, so you may well want to do that. But if these guys take the Weaverfield crest, they keep their 4-up invuln, but if your Carl takes the teleport crest, he and his unit gain deep strike. So you can, I think, get the benefit of both the invuln and the deep strike on the unit if you join them to a Carl with the deep strike crest. So you get to keep that amazing durability and you get that improved mobility as well in one combined package. Another reason you'll be wanting to join the Carl to them is their Hearthguard's rule, Oathband Bodyguard, and what this does is that while a character is leading the unit, any attacks that are higher strength than the unit's toughness, so basically anything strength 7 and above, gets -1 to wound them. So they can essentially never be wounded on better than a 3+, and anything from strength 6 to strength 11 will be wounding them on 4s, which is a big deal, and will absolutely make them an utter pain for your opponent to try and deal with and get rid of. In terms of their own damage output, the Hearthguard get an Etakarn plasma gun, which is their base weapon. This is a one-shot gun at strength 8, -3 AP and 2 damage, so it's not too shabby, it's not high volume, but it's a decent profile. They can instead take a Vulcanite Disintegrator, which, like the Carl, gives you 3 shots at strength 5, 0 AP and 1 damage, but also has devastating wounds, so you can spike that a bit higher than the reliability of the plasma gun if you want to, and it also will help them a bit more against hordes, although on the horde front they also all come with an Exo Armor grenade launcher, which grants them an extra d6 shots at strength 4, 0 AP and 1 damage, and it also has blast, so if you are coming up against a lot of hordes, that can help you thin them out a bit before you charge in. And then when they do get to melee, they all have Concussion Gauntlets, which grants them 2 attacks at strength 9, -2 AP and 2 damage, or they can instead kit themselves out for a bit more anti-chaff and anti-infantry. The Plasma Blade Gauntlet is 3 attacks, it's only strength 6, -2 AP and 1 damage, but obviously you get that extra attack for chewing through infantry. I think in general, I would prefer the Gauntlet though. Yes, it's 1 less attack, but it means you can wound things like toughness 4 on 2s, and you'll be wounding toughness 9 vehicles on 4s, and having 2 damage instead of 1 is a big improvement against a lot of the stuff you will be going up against. The Hesir can take a Concussion Hammer instead if he wants, which is worth doing. It gives him 3 strength 9 attacks. These are only -1 AP, but they are 3 damage base. They do also only hit on 4s, which is a big downside, but again, against a target with 2 Judgment tokens on, he's going to be hitting on 3s and wounding almost anything on 2s or 3s, which is fairly good. And then of course, having that flat 3 damage will add a lot of punch to the squad's output as well. In general, I just think the Hearthguard are an incredibly solid bodyguard unit. If you are taking a Carl, which as I said, you probably should, you definitely want to at least be considering. And if you are taking a Carl, then it's almost mandatory to take a squad of these, I think, just to go with him. They hit hard, they stick around for a long time, and with the combo of the 2 crests, they can still be relatively mobile thanks to that deep strike ability, so they can get into the enemy battle lines, soak up a load of firepower, and then just charge in and sow a load of carnage all amongst the enemy as soon as possible. The final unit in this video is the long-range fire support of the Votann, a unit I've seen a few people and ah about, but I love them, and I think they are really good. And so this last spot is going to the Brokir Thunderkin. These guys are just cheap. They are super cheap. They are bordering, I think, on criminally cheap. 75 points for 3, so 25 points per model. And what you get for those 25 points is a toughness 6, 3 wound, 3 up save model. And that gives you a huge amount of staying power for just 25 points. That is a solidly durable stat line for 25 points. They are only leadership 7 and only OC 1, so that isn't exactly brilliant, but they really can do a stellar job of sitting back, holding home objectives or getting into the midfield and holding midfield objectives and then just unleashing a huge amount of firepower into your opponent. They have basically no melee worth mentioning, it is just all guns for them, and they have an option of 3. They can take the bolt cannon, the SP conversion beamer, and the Graviton blast cannon. Of the 3, you're probably just going to be taking the Graviton cannon because, to be honest, the others aren't bad per se, but the Graviton cannon is just better. The bolt cannon is a souped up heavy bolter with strength 6, -1 AP, 2 damage, and sustained hits, whilst the SP conversion beamer is genuinely quite frightening for enemy elite units. It's only 1 shot, but sustained hits D3, and it is strength 7, -1 AP, and 3 damage. But what the conversion rule means is that against targets over 12 inches away, a 4+ to hit scores a critical hit, so on 4s to hit, you will be doing between 2 and 4 hits per Thunderkin, so you can very easily mow through things like Tyranid Warriors, Necron Destroyers, even Terminators. Thanks to that flat 3 damage, they will go down a lot quicker than they may be expecting, and you could find that you wipe out the entire squad before they even know what's hit them. But as I said, the best option I think is the Graviton. This does have the shortest range, it's only 18 inches, so you may need to move up to get into the midfield to use it, but it is just so good against basically any target. It is D6 shots with blast and shoots at strength 5, -2 AP, 2 damage, but it is also anti-vehicle 2+. So against infantry hordes or even elites, that blast and D6 shots will be brilliant, and -2 AP and 2 damage is a really good profile for chewing through things like Marines, or even Terminators or 1 wound infantry will fall quite quickly thanks to D6 shots and blast. It is just good against all manner of infantry, whether it's a big squad or a really small squad. And then even against vehicles, yes, the flat 2 damage isn't amazing, but you're going to be wounding them on 2s thanks to the anti-vehicle 2+, so you are going to get a ton of damage through, and that just will add up over time, and you can very quickly chip away at enemy tanks and vehicles. A squad of 6 for just 150 points will on average one-shot a Rhino with this gun, or chunk, 10 or 11 wounds off an Imperial Knight in one shooting phase. It is just such a good gun for going into anything short of monsters. I mean, Guardsmen, Marines, Rhinos, Terminators, even Necron Monoliths, they will all end up taking a load more damage than they'll be expecting from these guys. And then if your opponent does get too close for comfort and charges them, with Oathband covering fire, you score hits on 5+ during Overwatch, so whilst yes they are terrible in melee, it might actually be difficult for your opponent to even get into combat with them thanks to the amount of hits they will be taking as they charge into combat. They are just really durable, they have some fantastic ranged output, and importantly, they are just incredibly cheap. With judgment tokens on an enemy squad, the Thunderkin will easily make their points back in just 1 or 2 turns, and that for me makes them almost a must take. They are just ridiculously efficient for their points cost. So that is the Votann, and 5 of their units that I really like and think have a lot of play with the index currently. But as always, what do you make of this list? Let me know what units you think I should have included, and whether you think the Votann in general are in a good spot in the current 10th edition meta. As always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me. But until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.